Hi guys, Brand here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today we're going to be talking about how to stop rage queuing, because I feel like it's a pretty big problem that a lot of people have in the Dead by Daylight community. It's kind of something that carries over. I feel like a lot of online multiplayer games have this issue, but Dead by Daylight in particular, especially when it comes to the streamer situation, I see a lot of people getting very angry, very frustrated at the game, and trying to just hop back into it, just get more matches under their belt immediately, and it's just something that's not healthy for you, and it's kind of proven that it's not healthy for you. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. So first off, I kind of want to define what rage queuing is. Obviously, I feel like that doesn't need much explanation, but I'm sure you've been in this situation before. Often it comes when you have a lot of bad matches and you're trying to like get off for the night. You'll say just one more match because your last match you got like hard tunneled, or your last match you got 4-outed, and you're just mad, you're frustrated. You say just one more game, and you want to end it on something good. Rage queuing just means that if you're like upset or frustrated at your last match, for some reason you feel like you need to gratify that by immediately having a good match afterwards, which is ultimately up to RNG in a lot of aspects. It's hopping right back into a match when you know you are completely aware that you are extremely upset. You don't have to be angry, you could be just dejected, but you're having a lot of negative feelings with the game, but you just very compulsively hop into the next match hoping that it'll be better. And as you've probably found out by doing this, that usually doesn't really work in your favor. And there's actually a lot of like science that backs up why that usually doesn't work. I found an article that was written by Brian Baxter, who is a sports psychology professor, that I thought put this fairly well and put this into ways that everybody can easily understand, is that internal anger versus external anger affect the way you perform in any sort of competitive environment way differently. Internal anger is typically seen as a healthy thing, whereas external anger is typically seen as a very negative and performance affecting thing. Let's talk about internal anger first. Internal anger is looking inside and reflecting on yourself, which I don't know if you noticed, but the Dead by Daylight community is very bad about doing this. Let's take the example of having a really bad match. Let's say, just specifically to keep things simple right now, we're going to talk about the killer side of things in terms of getting 4-outed. You get 4-out is always a very sad and upsetting situation. I cannot tell you very many killer mains who take a 4-out very healthily or very happily. It's usually a very miserable situation, and usually a match that you didn't particularly enjoy. So if we're taking this perspective of an internal anger situation when it comes to the 4-man out, if you direct your anger internally, you're going to start asking questions kind of akin to what we do on the match reviews. You start wondering like, what could I have done better? Man, I really played like crap that match. And you start reflecting. And that's why internal anger actually has proven to be very helpful, because it actually helps you turn that negative energy into something productive, because you actually start reflecting and looking at what ways you could have built upon what happened, instead of the opposite, which is an external anger. And obviously with the 4-man out situation, that's all those survivors were so sweaty. All those survivors had such sweaty builds. The RNG, the map was so against me. Man, the role of survivor is so oppressive towards me. When you direct that anger externally, what happens is what that turns into is recklessness and poor performance. Because when you hop into that next match after your 4-man out, you're still mad and you're still frustrated. So you're going to be kind of slip and slidey in terms of your performance. You're going to be a little too excited to perform well in that next match, and you're not going to be as attentive to minimizing mistakes in chase, focusing on macro game, keeping track of how many hooks are on how many people. Like all this stuff that you need to think about in the middle of a Dead by Daylight match is going to be harder to think about, because it's being clouded by this extremely negative emotion hanging over you, this external anger. Which, as we talked about on the flip side, if you directed that anger internally, all these things that you were thinking about are already on your mind. You're already thinking about, what could I have done better in that last match? You're thinking about, should I exude more macro pressure? Should I have not made that choice in that chase last match? You're already thinking about ways you could have improved from the last situation, so you're already building those constructive blocks. Where if you're blaming it on all external sources, you're just going to be very sloppy in your next performance, because all you're focused on is the end goal. All you're focused on is correcting that mistake, correcting that outcome that came from the last match. You're not really focused as much on improving in the long run. You just want a better result this match. You want that immediate gratification, which your external anger is not going to provide that for you. And this is bad, because this ends up in a whole rabbit hole, because then you start, like we talked about with the example of one last match. I want one last good match to end on. You just keep chasing that dragon over and over again, and you keep progressively getting worse and worse and more frustrated, because you're so obsessed with that result that you're not realizing that if you were just more calm and more collected, or at least reflective with your anger, you would get that result. You would get that better outcome. You would get like that 3 or 4K that you're wanting so badly. But when you're focusing all that energy outward, obviously the world feels very oppressive in that moment, and you just can't perform well under those circumstances. You just can't. And that's very, very human, and that's not your fault. But what is human, what is your fault, is your choice to continue queuing when you know and you are aware that you are under these emotional pressures, you're under these circumstances, to continue hitting that next match button. That is on you. That is your fault. And I see way too many people do this, and it kind of contributes to a lot of the reasons people have a very, very bitter and bad relationship with not only Dead by Daylight, but multiplayer games in general. So if there is a TLDR to this, if you find yourself getting angry at Dead by Daylight and find yourself hitting the next match button over and over, at the very least, try to take that anger and internalize it. Try to put that inward and make it a reflective experience of getting mad at yourself and the way you performed. That way you can make that a constructive thing that could potentially help you get better in the long run, as opposed to directing that anger externally at things like the game, the RNG, the other players, because that just serves to make you more reckless and perform worse in the next match and doesn't really help anybody in that situation. What do you feel about the problem of rage queuing in the Dead by Daylight community? Let me know down in the comments below, because that's it for today's video, friends. But I do upload daily, so I will see you tomorrow. But if I do not, I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.